Kings. Hello! I'm ThriceRisen.
I'm Jacob.
And we are back to review Rivals of Ixalan. Who are the rivals? Well, there's like vampires, there's merfolk, there's pirates, and
There's dinosaurs!
yes. It just rolls.
If you haven't by now, I suggest you pick a side. For there is a lot of very flavorful, very powerful tribal mechanics going on with this set.
Indeed. But you know, we should probably thank our sponsors.
I absolutely agree.
And I do appreciate a certain amount of anonymity in sponsors. It's fine if they don't want to make themselves known right away. But one of our sponsors for this entire plane has made himself very well known, and that is Azor the Lawbringer, bringing the law like Judge Dredd, a movie I watched earlier. But Azor the Lawbringer will kick it off with the man who's in charge here. He is a 2 white, 2 blue, 6/6 flyer. Pretty good. It's a 6/6 flyer for 6. You're already doing pretty well.
Already good on the stats there.
When Azor the Lawbringer enters the battlefield, each opponent can't cast instant or sorcery spells during that player's next turn.
Seems pretty good. Dodges a lot of spot removal.
For at least a turn. Whenever Azor attacks, you may pay a white, 2 blue, and X. If you do, you gain X life and draw X's cards. I think that this ability reminds me very much that the revelation of Azor being heavily involved in the lore of this set reminds me of another revelation involving sphinxes.
If you look at just a 6/6 flyer for 2 white, and 2 blue, you may instantly think of yet another sphinx that was legendary in Magic's recent history. And that sphinx, of course, is Hesperia, the Supreme Judge. Now, Hesperia, if you'll recall, was in charge of the Azorius Guild. But when did the Azorius Guild start?
It started way back with Azor the
Lawbringer. Now, Azor was a planeswalker who was the author of the original Guild Pact. He was the one, of course, being the lawbringer that he is, that says, look at these 10 tribes we have. You know what we could use?
Some law!
Some law!
Pirates don't like it.
Mechanically speaking, Azor, every time he attacks, lets you cast a free instance of Sphinx's Revelation by opting to pay X whites and blue. So if you've been waiting and biding your time for Sphinx's Revelation to be back in Standard, this is your chance. But it's on
Also,
a creature.
why? Why were you waiting for that?
Why? Who wants that? Well, a lot of people, actually.
People probably do.
Now, the thing about Azor is that he is stuck on Ixalan just like everyone else, even though he himself is a planeswalker. And that, as we'll find out later, is by design and by choice.
He's the reason everyone's stuck.
Yes.
Speaking of people who are stuck, who shouldn't be stuck in the places in which they are stuck, we have a new tyrant in the city of Arazka, Kumena, Tyrant of Arazka. A merfolk shaman. God, I love that shaman tribal. And this strap is causing problems, so I'm just gonna be fiddling with it this whole video.
It is interesting that he's named a Tyrant when it doesn't seem like the rest of the merfolk have gone along with any kind of tyrannical reign.
No.
He may be unique in his method of ruling.
It's tyranny. But he is a powerhouse for merfolk.
Oh, absolutely.
In pretty much any format you can envision them, because he's a 2/4, which is a pretty respectable body size, especially because he costs a total of 3 CMC, 1 green and blue. He's a merfolk shaman, so you have merfolk and shaman synergies. Both of those tribes are very synergistic.
Yes.
Tap another untapped merfolk you control. Kumena, Tyrant of Arazka, can't be blocked this turn. You're playing commander, you're playing merfolk, you can just cast a merfolk, tap it, get in for, 2. But you know what merfolk has? They have lords, so he's gonna be bigger than that.
And they have +1/+1 counters.
And then he's not done tapping stuff. You can tap 3 untapped merfolk you control to draw a card.
That's honestly probably going to be the most used ability. And it gives the Merfolk decks a lot of reach, because right now they're all cheap and low to the ground.
But wait, this guy who has aspirations of being a planeswalker, I'm not saying that in the lore, I'm saying that because he has a third ability, tap 5 untapped Merfolk you control, put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control.
Rivers Herald, anyone? So the thing about this guy is there are 2 tribes right now that have the most synergy with tokens. That's going to be vampires and that's going to be merfolk. Dinosaurs have them and pirates have them, but not to the emphasis that merfolk and pirates and rather vampires do. This guy says, you know all those merfolks you're making that seem small compared to the dinosaurs? Yeah, let's do something about that.
But you know, as you mentioned, vampires have some strong synergies already, and they're not going to get any weaker, because we have Elenda the Dusk Rose, our third legendary creature of great commanderness. There's a lot of those in this set, by the way. Elenda the Dusk Rose is a 1/1 for 2, a white and a black. Okay.
There's got to be something
There's
here.
got to be something more to this creature. She has lifelink, okay, but she's a 1/1, so... Whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Elenda the Dusk Rose. Ah, there it is.
There's the beef.
You're running white and black and vampires. Stuff's gonna be dying, and she's gonna be getting bigger.
And not just their stuff either.
Yeah, another creature, period. When Elenda dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is her power. She hanger back walkers into lifelinking vampires.
The biggest problem that Elenda is going to have with Standard right now is that one of the most popular spot removals is Vrashka's Contempt, which exiles. And another one is Settle the Wreckage, which also exiles. So with Elenda, if you really want to go into that mechanic for her specifically, you will want some way of sacrificing her.
Yeah. Now, the long-awaited, the family man, Angra the Flame Chained, is up next. For 3, a black and a red, you get a 4 loyalty planeswalker. His +1 says each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life.
Not bad.
It's not bad. When I have a planeswalker, I prefer their plus ability to try to defend them in some way.
Or at the very least, they're minus.
Or have some way to do that. This doesn't do it on the plus, so let's look at his -1.
But you will note that discard a card and losing life are both black and red together.
Yes. He's a well-balanced man. No Tor. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step if it has converted mana cost of 3 or less. This is a tricky -3 ability. I said -1, but that's because I'm reading it with my bad eye. This is a tricky ability at first glance, because at first inspection it looks like a simple treachery effect.
Yeah, threaten something like that.
But you can use it very strategically to kill something of converted mana cost 3 or less, which, let's face it guys, CMC 3 can win you games.
It's true.
Just look at Alurin.
Look at Kuman, Tyrant of Araska.
But yeah, so it's a very strategic ability that you can use to steal a creature, fling it at your opponent, and make sure it's gone at the end of turn.
And not only that, but he can take something bigger.
Yes.
You would just have to give it back. But if that's the turn you plan to make a game-changing play, that could be well worth it.
Let me just get this giant blocker out of the way, I don't know, any number of dinosaurs.
Any number of large dinosaurs.
Steal a dinosaur lord.
Yes.
Shrink the team. Pretty useful. And now he's got a -8, which that's a long walk from 4 to 8 if you're +1ing him, but let's see what it does. Each opponent loses life equal to the number of cards in his or her graveyard. Okay, so his +1 feeds into his +8 very, very directly.
Yes.
So, assuming you do nothing, I see his -3 as an emergency ability.
Right.
I see you're going to just play him down, take him up to 5 loyalty for 5 mana. You're going to bleed 2. The next turn you're going to do it again, and you can do it again, and you can do it again. You're doing this 4 times before you open.
Right.
So that's 8 life and 8 life and 4 cards that you drained from each opponent. And then you're going to -8 and probably finish them off because you've put 4 cards in their graveyard, and assuming they've only lost those 4 cards this whole game, which is unlikely. But it's unlikely.
I mean, if they cast an instant or sorcery, there it goes.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying, assuming let's just say worst case scenario, the only cards that are in their graveyard are the ones you've made them discard.
Right.
So there's 4 cards there. They've lost 8 life, and then you're going to minus it to get another 4 life. So that's 12 life just off of ticking his abilities up and down.
Seems solid to me.
Mm-hmm. What also is solid is the Radiant Champion, Watley.
Watley's back, and this time with even more Radiance.
I was actually surprised that they printed her again, so on the heels of her debut.
Well, I think they saw this as kind of the last chance to do so without having her leave the plane for some reason.
Mm.
And Watley without dinosaurs just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So they kind of had to...
So do you think this Watley or the other one is superior?
I think Anrath really wants to leave this plane. Between the two, okay, so they do 2 different things, and I think we'll juxtapose them, either way, after reading this one's abilities.
Mm. So, starting off, she's a 3 loyalty for 2, a green, and a white, so 4 for 3. +1, put a loyalty counter on Watley Radiant Champion for each creature you control. Gideon called...
He wants his ability back.
Yeah, it's not quite his ability, because it's creatures you control.
Right. Which
it's not what
your
they've got.
opponent, exactly.
But I mean, she's all about the dinosaurs and the dinosaur tokens, and yeah.
Interestingly enough, though, she doesn't mention dinosaur in any of her abilities.
Yeah, that is true. Which is weird, because there are dinosaurs aplenty in the background of her her card there.
A specific 3-headed one.
But her -1... Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Her -1 says target creature gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. She cares a lot about having a lot of dudes.
Right.
Much like a certain merfolk from the previous set.
Now, any experienced Magic player will note the distinct lack of trample in her -1. So, optimally, of course, you're going to want to target a creature of yours that already has trample or that already is unblockable.
This is true. Like a Tyrant of Erasca, if you're running some weird Bant jank. And then her -8, which is a longer walk than Angra. Let's be honest, that's a long... Let's see, start 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 6 turns, assuming the opponent doesn't touch her.
Right, and assuming you don't have any creatures
to make. Oh, that is true. If you have creatures, it'll accelerate a lot faster. So
theoretically,
you could tick her up in 2 turns if you've got a really solid board state. Now, achieving that in Standard might be a bit tough.
There's a lot of removal
But in Commander, but her -8, you get an emblem that says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. That's pretty solid and probably pretty abusable.
So we've seen this kind of effect a lot of times in Magic. Most recently with Lifecrafter's Bestiary, and that was a trigger you had to pay extra for. Basically, creature-based strategies sometimes have trouble drawing enough cards. And what's better for that than each of your creatures drawing you a card?
So do you think this one or the other one is the superior Watley?
So, you've got to think about it 2 ways. First of all, this Watley costs 1 less. And in the game of Magic, mana cost is directly related to something's power level. You know, Arcane Denial versus, Cancel or something like that. Mana cost makes a big difference. And so with Watley, the fact that in a creature-based strategy, you could alter the very next turn after she comes out, that is something worth considering. So aside from her ult, how good is she? Well, her +1 essentially does nothing.
It feeds her ult.
It feeds either her ult or continued uses of her -1.
So
then we have to evaluate her strictly based on her 2 second abilities.
Yeah.
So how good are they? Her -1, target creature gets +X will end of turn while X is the number of creatures you control. So there's 2 ways you have to think about this. A is more damage, or B as removal. Because one of 2 things is going to happen. Either all of that damage is going into your opponent, into one of their blockers, or into one of their removal spells. So either you're eating a removal spell, eating a blocker, or attacking their face. All of which seem really good, if you have creatures on the field.
Yeah,
This-
so her second ability,
yeah.
also, if she's just on a naked board, does nothing.
Right, exactly. But on the right board does a lot. Now her -8, of course, super good, and you don't even need, like, say you plus her up, and then they wipe your board, they fumigate, they settle the wreckage. If you can still get off her -8, it's still worthwhile for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Without you having to have a board state. So you have one ability, two really, that depend on a board state, and one that doesn't.
I honestly would see this Watley played as almost something like a pre-combat phase combat trick, where you drop her down and you either are going to tick her up and go, you either drop her down into a full board and tick her up and go, alright, you better have a Wrath very soon, otherwise I'm going to start doing some stuff. Or you drop her down into a pre-combat board and do her -1
Right.
and make something big.
So,
Like a Gishath.
yeah. And essentially, this Watley wants to be played in the same kinds of decks as some of the older Ajani cards. As for the 5-drop version of her from the previous set, her +2 gained you some life, which was cool and saved you in some instances. Her 0 was really nice, and her ultimate was very nice for like enrage or getting blockers out of the way. Ultimately, though, I think this Watley is going to see more play than her dinosaur-centered counterpart.
It's more universally useful.
Right.
So, talking about paths to victory, I am a huge fan of the transforming cards. And so let's look at the first one, Path of Metal. Not metal, clang, metal as in what you're made of.
Which, for some automatons, is metal.
This is true. It's a legendary enchantment for a red and a white. That's pretty good.
That's not bad.
For the low cost of a Boros charm, what do we get? When Path of Metal enters the battlefield, alright, stopping right there, it has an ETB, that's solid. It deals 1 damage to each creature that doesn't have First Strike, Double Strike, Vigilance, or Haste. I see an Enrage enabler,
Absolutely.
like, big time.
This really does two things for us. It enrages our stuff, and potentially, if they're running Merfolk or Vampire tokens, kills some of their things. 2/1s with flying, 2/1s with an ETB, etc.
Just generic 1/1 tokens are going to hate this guy. Also, it says whenever you attack with at least 2 creatures that have First Strike, Double Strike, Vigilance, and or is important,
Very.
Haste, transform Path of Metal. Well, what's it turn into? Well, it's going to be a land, as is the theme in Ixalan. It turns into Metzali, Tower of Triumph. It's a legendary land. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. It's pretty solid.
Not bad.
You can pay 1 red and tap it to deal 2 damage to each opponent. Kind of like Vance's Blasting Cannons, just a little bit.
Yeah.
But you can also pay 2 white and tap to choose a creature at random that attacked this turn, destroy that creature.
Now see, if they're only attacking with 1 creature, that's a bit of a deterrent. So, I'm getting a few things here. The first thing I'm getting is that the Boros Legion would really like this card. The second thing I'm getting is that Heliod's Spear, that effect is coming back slightly as well with its third. So what does this do for you? How does this help your deck? Well, when it first comes down, again, it can trigger your Enrage, it can wipe out some of their small creatures, and then assuming you have any combination of those keywords, Haste, First Strike, it transforms. Now, Ramp is really hard to come by in Boros. Now, a lot of the Boros decks nowadays are Naya, so they're running green as well, so it's not as necessary for them. But even apart from the Naya dinosaur decks, Boros needs Ramp, and this flips into something that taps for mana. Not only that, but Boros, as a color combination, tends to burn its hand and run out of things to do quickly. So to give yourself then an activated mana sink that you can use time and time again to further your goal of, let's face it, direct damage to the face can be quite nice.
Let's pause on this for a moment. Do you think this card has applications in modern burn decks? I don't know if it's good enough. In a subpar burn deck, I could absolutely see this used because you're running things like Goblin Guide, Monastery Swiftspear, things that have haste.
Right.
So that you could easily drop this down on like turn 3 and immediately attack with 2 hasty things and flip it into a land that's going to be able to shock your opponent for the rest of the game.
That does give you a lot of reach and longevity as the game goes on. And even it says choose a creature at random that attack this turn. You'll notice that doesn't target. It simply lets you choose. So say they've got a Goyf they want to get in with, well, they're going to have to think twice about that if you have mana open. The burn decks already have the potential to play at their opponent's end step.
Yeah.
So that is very nice to where you
can
wouldn't
draw
have
go
to
to
use
a certain extent.
necessarily your spells. The main problem I'm going to see with this that I think other people would be concerned about is that they wouldn't feel confident in seeing enough Swift Spears or Goblin Guides at a time. And in response to playing this, your opponent might opt to destroy one of your creatures when they wouldn't otherwise do so. And the biggest problem with it, though, even beyond all of that, is that when you first cast it, or when it first enters, it doesn't do any damage to your opponent. That might be enough to keep it out. But I would not be surprised to see it in the sideboard against anything where 1 toughness opponent or enemies like Infect would be potentially relevant.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and then come back and look at some more cards. So stay tuned.